Yo guys, now I was debating whether or not to make this video because the previous art study took me like 12 hours in total to do, but I got a lot of comments that wanted a second art study video, so I guess let's just get this started. Another 12 hours, let's go, I guess. Anyways, who is how do you say that name? WLOP? WLOP is another famous digital artist who popped off back in like 2015. Back when we all knew him, he was painting in mostly 2D, but nowadays his modern works are very 3D influenced with 2D painted over it. Just for your information, I'll only be focusing on the 2D version of WLOP's art style because, to be honest, I'm not about to learn the whole fundamentals of Blender, a 3D modeling software, just for one single art study and then to never use it again. Alright, let's start with his process. Just to let you know, we are going to be painting an art study based on this piece. First, it starts with an idea, obviously. Now, this is also when you grab all your references, and do not skip the reference stage, please. Here, let me show you what the process usually looks like. Go on Pinterest and just type up and find references for what kind of poses you're looking for. Clothing, WLOP paints women with minimal clothing, so that's probably not something you do for this type of painting. References for even the mood of the painting, hairstyles, jewelry, anything. Just find references. Don't go too crazy on this, just find what you need. Now he sketches his idea onto the canvas. Then he paints his art in black and white initially, carefully planning out the lighting and proportions and stuff, making sure he gets that right before anything else. This is the stage where he's seen adjusting and fine-tuning the values before he really dives into painting. It's easier to focus on the fundamentals when you don't have to worry about color, so that is why he paints in black and white during this stage of the painting. And this is a technique a lot of artists do because, well, it works. Remember when I said he doesn't color during the planning stage? I lied. Sort of. WLOP is an artist who colors relatively very early in his paintings. So this was very unorthodox for me because I normally get some details down before I color anything. So with the coloring process, he normally focuses on coloring the whole piece in general. Which, if you think about it, the color you choose for the whole piece will set the vibe and tone for the entire painting. So in this case, blue creates a chill and calming mood. WLOP does a lot of micro adjustments throughout his whole painting. He's always seen slightly changing the values of his piece and changing the color and hue of specific local areas of his piece. And for him, it's just a constant process of editing. To paint like WLOP, you have to think like an editor. Constantly looking for proportion issues, color issues, value issues, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't. Basically being your own critic throughout the whole process, and most importantly, not being afraid to make changes. When it comes to rendering, WLOP doesn't completely render his piece photorealistic all the way. WLOP mainly renders based on the focal point. Let's take a good look of the reference we are looking at and give it a little breakdown. WLOP's idea of rendering is very intentionally messy. It's more of a stylistic choice and it really works. To get this rendering style down, you have to mainly render the focal points of the painting, which the focal points of this painting are both the table with the paintbrushes here and the face here. Those are the main points that WLOP wanted the viewer to focus on, so obviously those are the most rendered areas of the piece. So this is exactly what I'm trying to achieve here. Before his final result, WLOP often is seen adding textures and stuff. I did this by rendering parts of my piece, specifically the background with a textured brush. Using a textured brush gives you the ability to control where you want your texture to be in the piece. It's really good, but it can overpower your piece with texture unless that's the style you're going for. But with a WLOP style painting, it's done with a good combination of smooth textures and hard textures. And especially within this piece, he's seen throwing slight paint splatter textures on the painting. Whether it's done by a brush or just chucking on an image with overlay, you can still get the same result whichever way you do it. Okay, now we talk about the techniques involved. This can get a bit boring, so yeah. Initially, WLOP changes the values in general by using either the curves adjustment layer or the levels adjustment layer. They're both very good tools for changing values. With these tools you can adjust the shading, midtones and lighting, making them lighter or darker as needed. WLOP also uses Liquify to fix proportion issues, and this is a technique I highly recommend. WLOP uses this religiously and so do I. Basically with Liquify you can warp and transform the image completely within your control. You can make things bigger or smaller. It's just a great tool. Unless you work in multiple layers, then that's a bit of an issue. Not sure why he does this, but WLOP does a crazy amount of micro adjustments in his piece. What do I mean by this? WLOP is seen throwing heaps of multiply layers constantly throughout the whole piece. I tried to mimic this technique throughout my art study as well, and I believe I did a fairly decent job. Like I said before, it's a constant process of editing, and he constantly darkens some areas and stuff just to see whether or not it works, and he does this heaps of times. He's also seen making specific parts of the painting a bit more red using this sophisticated technique. and he does this through the color channel section. I ended up doing this technique for my art study as well, and the technique feels really odd. It is a more efficient way to paint a specific tone. Like WLOP used this technique to paint only red hues into his painting, but it's real confusing. I ain't using that technique, not gonna lie. Anyways, that was my art study to paint like WLOP. I'm pretty proud of how this art study turned out. This is very different to my own style, so I felt like I was doing something completely wrong during the whole painting, but thankfully I just learned to trust the whole process. Well, anyways, I hope you can take something from this, and thanks for watching. Bye!